His loudspeaker. Watch out. Here you go, buddy.
Hey guys, thanks for being patient and listening to what I have to say today. I tried to prepare for this, so I'm just going to dive right into it and thank you again. I am a Canadian, free to speak without fear, free to worship God in my own way, free to stand for what I think wrong, and free to oppose what I believe to be wrong. I am free to choose those who shall govern my country. This heritage of freedom I pledge to uphold for myself and for all mankind. Prime Minister John Diefenbaker said that back in 1960 as he discussed the passing of the Canadian Bill of Rights, a very important document that upholds our fundamental freedoms. Please take the time to learn the Canadian Bill of Rights inside and out. Knowledge is power, and knowledge will protect you when the time comes. I'd also like to talk about the over 100,000 Canadians who laid down their lives for liberty and freedom, whose names are enshrined in the memorial chamber of our center block Peace Tower. They are in there in a book, all of their names, every single one. And they made a promise to uphold our nation's freedom. The price of that freedom, the price of that promise to our nation was their lives. They served bravely and they died heroes. They maintained our country's values and they defended our freedom. To all those who have served, who have laid down their lives, or who have returned never quite the same, we make a promise in return to you. We promise to make the most of the freedom you died and suffered defending. That means participating in civic duty. That means voting in elections. That means speaking up and speaking out when tyranny is at the door.
Who is this crazy girl that I'm with?
And tyranny is at our door, folks.
Poor dog. That's dog. That's
people are getting knocks at the door today. Police are showing up to people's doors to intimidate them and silence their voices. People are being unfairly arrested. Crown attorneys are throwing any charges they can cook at people to stop this movement. But they will not stop this movement. Because we made a promise to them. A promise made with those who have died and those who have yet to be born. A promise made to our sacred national heroes. A promise made to our families, to our friends, and to ourselves. We promise to uphold our freedom. Good. Today I'm going to talk about judicial equality. Canada is a nation founded on the supremacy of God and the supremacy of the law. The law isn't just ordinances written in a book, in a bill, and passed in Parliament. They are a system of cultural and historical progress that determine our agreed upon social contract. That social contract is the fabric of our nation. It determines almost everything about our daily lives. It allows peace to prosper. Without the social contract, our social fabric is destroyed, and so is our country. The law is only valid if it is applied equally. Let me talk about that by reading an excerpt from an Ottawa Citizen article concerning a crime that occurred at the intersection of Bank and Riverside Drive during the convoy protest on February 13th here in Ottawa. I'm going to read this because I want to read it to give you context of how disgusting this is. All right. How the Battle of Billings Bridge attracted hundreds of volunteers, trapped convoy for hours. Sean Burgess, a senior instructor in global and international study at Carleton University, had learned that a convoy of trucks would be traveling on Riverside Drive on Sunday morning, heading west to Bronson Avenue, where the trucks would churn north and join protesters downtown. They were just coming to join in the protest like we did every single day, peacefully. Burgess' plan, and this guy, Sean Burgess, by the way, for your records, is an instructor, a professor at Carleton University. He's a professor, and he teaches law, and he teaches international studies to young people. This man. Get that, understand that. Burgess' plan was posted on a neighborhood Facebook page, usually dedicated to arranging play dates in dog walking.
All she did was
A
move
group of
from here to
volunteers
there and start
would
a
block the
nonsense
corner
over
of Bank
Oh,
Street
really?
and Riverside Drive, detaining the convoy for a short time, apparently, which is something they can do. Decisions were made by consensus.
Oh, there she is.
As the hours rolled by, discussion circles were held to decide the conditions for releasing the trucks, the prisoners. No one wanted the trucks to be able to go and turn around and go downtown or go back to Coventry, said Hardin. As the sun was going down and the temperature dipped, the truck drivers in the convoy were permitted a negotiated retreat. They were allowed to leave after 12 hours of hostage negotiation teams trying to get them out from hundreds of maniacs who had illegally detained them. Illegally. You cannot do that in Canada. None of us did that during the convoy. They had trapped these people and they were not allowed to leave. All right, let's understand the gravity of that. All right, let me just recatch myself. They were allowed to leave one at a time, but only after their trucks had been stripped of flags and Freedom Convoy decals and surrendered any jerry cans, even the protest ones. The look on their, this is a quote, the look on their faces when they were taking down their flags was one of defeat, not pride, said Hardin. By the time the blockade was over, about 9 hours after it began, those who were part of what some dubbed the Battle of Billings Bridge were declaring victory. It was a good day, you know? They trapped people against their will for 12 hours. What a great day for democracy, right? They didn't get to go downtown and see the bouncy castles or talk to their friends. They had to sit here at a corner. Okay, it just happened. I have never seen anything like it. Capital Ward Councillor for the City of Ottawa, Sean Menard, who was at the blockade all day, estimated there were more than 1,000 people in attendance. Organically, we were 1,000 people standing shoulder to shoulder, he said. There were some tense moments. I imagine so. That usually happens in a hostage situation. There tends to be some tense moments. The driver of one truck was attempting to nudge people out of the way with his vehicle, said Ottawa Centre MPP Joel Hardin, who was on the scene and looking on with mixed feelings of pride and anxiety in a hostage crisis. We could seal the protesters in. We could create a human chain and close it if the police won't, said Carleton Professor Burgess. Now I would like, so that's the article. That was an excerpt from the Ottawa Citizen, the Battle of Billings Bridge, you can Google it. I just wanted to read that to communicate what happened that day and how disgusting it was. But now I'd like to read you something else, something from our law. This is from the Criminal Code of Canada, section 279(2). It's called forcible confinement. And this is something I want to say to the Crown Attorney's Office in Ottawa, to these people on video who committed these crimes. 279(2), forcible confinement. Everyone who, without lawful authority, confines, imprisons, or forcibly seizes another person is guilty of A, an indictable offense and liable to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 10 years, or B, an offense punishable on summary conviction. All right? Where are the charges for Ottawa Centre NDP MPP Joel Hardin, who was present and instructing that group of people? Where are the charges for Ottawa Councillor Sean Menard, who was present and instructing that crime? Where are the charges for the hundreds of other criminals who, on video, held dozens of convoy protesters hostage on that street corner? There has been no charges, but plenty against us. That's quite unequal law, if you ask me. I met some victims of this crime down here on Wellington later that night as they finally made it here. Particularly one older lady who was in tears. She was in tears because she had endured that menacing for over 12 hours. For 12 hours, they screamed and smashed on their car. No one was allowed to leave. It was completely illegal. They forced so many to remove their flags and their decals, but not this little old lady. As they screamed and hollered and banged and threatened, this Canadian woman stood her ground. She flew our flag bravely. She left that hostage situation a champion of our freedoms. She is the spirit of our country. I love her dearly. We got lots of hugs for her, folks. She was very loved that night, so don't feel too bad. All right. I'd also like to quickly mention the other Canadians who are very unfairly charged and detained, including Pat King, Tamara Litch, Chris Barber, George Freedom Billings, Pastor Art and his brother, who just preached the word of God, just wanted to praise God in their own way as enshrined in our Canadian Bill of Rights, who was arrested after a sermon he gave at the Coutts border for a breach of some sort of unfair condition. Okay, Randy Hillier, sitting MPP in the Ontario legislature, just like Joe Harden, but guess what? He plays for the wrong team, so no justice for him. We got Randy Hillier, who's charged with 9 offenses, including assault on a police officer. And guys, the video that we think they charged them for that for was when they were coming onto Ottawa on a particular day. Randy and Maxime Bernier, I believe, were together. And the PPS here had set up a little funnel and people couldn't get through. There were little gates on each side. So Randy in the video moves the gate and says, "Come on in." And there's PPS standing there, and they have later testified that they felt too afraid to stop Mr. Hillier because he's very physically intimidating. Right? So that's the assault on a police. That's what we believe to be the assault on a police officer, was him moving that barricade. You know what his real crime was? He stood up to Justin Trudeau. He spoke truth to power, and he did it really well. So they did anything they could to throw him under the bus, right? Cool. So yeah, I just want to, and also hundreds of other people who came to our capital city to express themselves peacefully and legally, who were detained, who were charged with anything they could cook up, and just like obstruction of justice for standing in a protest. You weren't hitting anyone. And what about the people who weren't charged, folks? What about the people who were cooked into a paddy wagon for 12 hours? And keep in mind, most of these people are from other places in Canada. So they brought them into the paddy wagon for 12, 13 hours, disoriented them nice and good, and then drove them out to Arnprior. Drove them out wherever they could into the middle of the woods, and in many cases I hear they took their winter clothes. It was negative, their keys, their wallets, their phones, and said, "You're free to go." And these people have nowhere, they don't know the Ottawa Valley, they're in Arnprior, they're up to 7, they're in Smith Falls, they're in Carleton Place. They dropped them wherever they could. How is that legal? And they took their winter clothes for many of these people. They could have died. But I want to tell you something. The biker church, I heard this on many accounts, the biker church knew about this, they followed those wagons, and they rescued those people. The Ottawa Van Eve Biker Church. So God bless those people at the biker church. They saved some lives. All right. Okay. All right, so anyways, I really appreciate you guys giving me the time to speak today. I'm really glad you showed up, and I hope we keep coming out. They're not going to win. The WAF isn't going to win. The UN isn't going to win. Justin Trudeau isn't going to win. We are strong, we are free, and we are Canadian. Thank you guys.